First and foremost.
Nice and close to the mic.
Okay. As we gather here today, we are reminded that Guelph is situated on treaty land that is steeped in rich Indigenous history and is home to many First Nations, Inuit, Métis, and peoples today. It is important to acknowledge the land that we live on as the very least that we can do as settlers to work towards reconciliation. It is important to note that history does not start at the point of European contact. History begins long before this and includes the Anishinaabe, Adawandron, Haudenosaunee, Métis, and Inuit peoples and continues to the present day. Today we acknowledge the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation of the Anishinaabe peoples on whose traditional land we are currently meeting. So when the IPCC report came out, I realized something that had not struck me with such severity. The climate crisis will hit in my lifetime. Worse, the climate crisis will hit my children. And worst of all, the climate crisis is hitting right now. And so many of us don't even realize its impacts. The IPCC report was a game changer. Scientists finally had a platform from which the world might actually listen. And people did listen, only enough to share it on Facebook, forget about it the week after. But all you guys are here today because you still think about it. You still care. We are creating a sustainable network and wave of leadership made by people like you who continue to make positive change around the world and fight against adversity. We have to keep fighting the good fight, and we can do it together. Yeah. Yes. Okay. My name is Sequoia, as I mentioned before. I'm a grade 12 student graduating from GCBI this year. I'll be joining the Wellington Water Watchers board this term. Joining the Wellington Water Watchers board is not just an extracurricular activity, as some might assume from my age. It's a duty. It's a call to action. The disrespect and uprooting of Mother Nature is not something I can just sit by and watch. It hurts. And I know you feel the same way too. Grassroots organizing with real people who have real concerns is a sure way to make a small wave in the currents of positive change with the hopes of a ripple effect taking off around the world. We can all be part of this change, and we already are part of this change. Water is life, so let's make this life worth living. It is now time I'd like to introduce the change maker who will be chairing this meeting, Rob Case. Rob Case is the chair of the Wellington Water Watchers, an assistant professor in social development studies at the University of Waterloo. Rob has been there to support me in all my various endeavors in every way that he can. He joined my brainstorming group when I was the only one sitting there in the corner alone, and he came over and talked to me. He is very soft-spoken and makes sure everyone's voice gets heard, and has supported some amazing water activism throughout the years. I'm very pleased to present to the stage Rob Case. Thank you.
They decided that they were going to reach out to President Obama in particular because they were his children, right? He loved them, he cared about them. And so they decided, we don't have any money, we don't have any resources. People really don't give a shit what we say anyway in the United States as Indigenous peoples. And so we're gonna do what we know how to do, and we're gonna run. So the kids, they organized a run, and they decided to run to Washington, D.C. to tell President Obama in front of the White House that they didn't want this pipeline in their territory. It was amazing. These kids got together and they ran, and people tried to intimidate them. There were folks that told them they couldn't do it, people that said that it wasn't worth the time, and they got all the way to Washington, D.C., and President Obama wouldn't meet with them. Right, these children that were his kids, these ones that he was going to take care of, their future that was going to be protected by President Obama, kind of SOL by the time they got there because President Obama didn't want to hear it. Okay, so the kids, they decided, you know what, we're not going to be dismayed, we're not going to be bothered by it, we're going to go back and we're just going to regroup and we're going to talk with our elders and ask them what we're going to do. When they got back, they met with some of their elders, and the elders said, we have some land. It was a group of women actually that got together and said, we have some land, we want to support you, you are our future generations, you're the future ancestors, how can we do this? And the kids and the leaders that were there said, we're going to start a camp, right? So that's where Sacred Stone Camp came from. LaDonna Brave Bull Allard, a bunch of other women from Standing Rock Reservation and neighboring Cheyenne River Sioux tribe came together and they said, we're going to support these youth. And so there was about 10 people when the camp opened up. Majority of them were kids that were living in teepees, didn't really know what was going on. They put out a call. Mind you, the run had already happened, right? The run happened, they got like a little wave of attention, and then everyone kind of just forgot about them. All of a sudden, there were messages that were being spread around all across Turtle Island, right, that these camps had opened up. It was going to be this incredible thing, and that the indigenous peoples were taking back their land again. It was amazing. When I showed up to Standing Rock, my little brother and sister decided not to wait for me to put in my 2 weeks notice to quit my job. They just took off, and my aunt called me the next morning and said, I don't know what you told them, but they got in their car and they're driving to North Dakota, and I need you to go out there and deal with it, right? When I was a kid, my aunt and my grandma, she was a teacher in Little Wound, or at Little Wound School in Kyle, South Dakota, on the Pine Ridge Reservation, and she told me that if you ever wanted to know how much the United States government hated indigenous peoples, you would just go to the Lakota reservations and see what they had done to the Great Sioux Nation, right? If you wanted to see how much they hated indigenous peoples, you go to any reservation, but specifically these reservations that I was headed to, that I had unwittingly sent my little brother and sister to, and I was just hearing this voice in the back of my head. And so my aunt called me. She said, you need to get up there. Long story short, I got up there. My little brother and sister, they said, hi, this is our sister. She's really sweet, kind of a pushover. She's going to pay for everything. And she has a car. She's going to take care of us. Maybe not in quite those words. But I showed up, and they had a group of youth that were there, and they wanted to start a youth council. My background is in marketing. And so I decided, okay, well, I can't really do much because I'm not that young. At the time, I guess I was 26, but I felt a lot older. And I got there and I said, okay, well, I'll do what I can do to help you. I helped them set up their platforms for the International Indigenous Youth Council. In this past June, they were actually granted the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Award for their works that they had done in Standing Rock and since. Yeah. The International Indigenous Youth Council, it wasn't just the youth runners that had started this, right? It was youth that had come from all over the country. Some of them were indigenous to Turtle Island, some of them were indigenous to other places. Basically, the Youth Council's creed was that everyone is indigenous to somewhere and we all have work to do. So that was the long and short of, me setting up the Youth Council or working with them to get them set up. And while we were in Standing Rock, I was there for about 6 months. We successfully de-escalated a lot of really horrible situations. I'm sure many of you are privy to what happened in Standing Rock. Raise your hand if you know what happened, so I don't have to tell you. Who doesn't know? Okay, who's sad that they don't know? You raise your hand, anybody know? Okay, so what happened was that the United States government, in all of their glory and fame and brute force, decided to come in and squash a camp that at one point reached 18,000 people, right? We were the 12th largest city in North Dakota, which really scared the shit out of people. That a bunch of natives were getting together and that we were talking and speaking our languages and practicing our songs and our dances and our ceremonies, right? Because until 1978, we weren't actually allowed to practice our religion in the United States. And so, for them, especially in rural North Dakota, seeing a bunch of natives get together was a little worrisome. And so, when I left Standing Rock, for those of you that don't know, the pipeline was put in. We were unable to stop construction. We can talk all day about why that was. But the long story short is that the United States government really, really, really doesn't like it when people ask them to be accountable for their actions. Really doesn't like it when they're being held accountable for the documentation that they've signed, right? No one wants to talk about how treaties are laws of the land in Amendment 6 of the Constitution, and yet indigenous peoples have nothing of what we started with, right? I believe in my presentation, there's a map that actually shows how much land was once owned, right, all of it, by indigenous peoples, and how much we have left, and yet we're the people that are still asking and begging and living off government land, and all we're doing is walking around with our, big sagging pockets full of money, casino money that we have, and, all of this barrage of infection that we got from other people, but somehow we did it to ourselves. And so, yeah, tangent. Somebody Somebody has some feelings, huh? Yeah, so I left Standing Rock, and I realized when I left Standing Rock, I didn't have those rosy-colored glasses that I did when I first got there, right? I was going to stop a pipeline. Everybody's ready to stop a pipeline until they're at the front end of a rifle, right? Or everybody's ready to stop a pipeline until they see someone's arm be blown off or their eye, be blown out. It's all fun and games until you see your friends being thrown into dog kennels, right? And marked with markers, numbers, right? Anybody have a history of what that looks like in their family, being marked with numbers? Yeah, it happened to our people. It happened to our allies. It happened to a lot of folks. And when I left Standing Rock, they had actually, Energy Transfer Partners, who's probably watching this, hello. They doxed me. They sent all of my information out to everyone that they could, and there were people that showed up to my reservation to harass my mother in the middle of the night. There were people that were pulling over my mom and saying that they were going to extradite her truck that I had taken to North Dakota back to North Dakota for evidence. There were, people that said that they were going to do a lot of things, but I decided, you know what, I'm better than that, and I'm just going to keep fighting pipelines. So I went to Minnesota, and I pitched in with the Line 3 pipeline, which is actually still being contested right now. The Public Utilities Commission in Minnesota is still trying to push this pipeline through. It's actually coming from Enbridge. How many of y'all know Enbridge? Yeah, you say it like that. Me too. My girlfriend and I saw an Enbridge truck. Where were we, babe? I don't know. We saw an Enbridge truck somewhere, and we were like driving past, like really slow, looking at the guy, and we were like, probably has no idea who we are or what we're fighting. You should be scared, right? Anyway, so Standing Rock, Line 3. Now I live in Los Angeles, and we, in case you haven't seen, have had these crazy fires in California. And there are all these people that are walking around going, I don't know where these fires came from. It's incredible. It's something that we've never seen before because, climate change and climate disaster and knowing that your climate is actually going to hit the glass ceiling in 12 years is kind of a big deal, but no one seems to put the pieces together that the reason it's happening is because we're lacking a really viable resource, aka water, right? So that brings me into my next thing. With respect to whoever spoke before, I can't remember who had said it, but this land is not your land. This water is not your water. These resources are not your resources, and the people here are actually not your people to control. I do just want to be brutally honest with you and let you know that pipelines and the extractive industries that exist, in case you haven't known, are actually killing Indigenous peoples at an exponential rate. In Canada alone, I know people like to point fingers and say, oh, the Americans, they got Trump. Okay, well, y'all have wolves in sheep's clothing, right? And I think that it's a moral imperative for folks to know that what's happening in the United States is a direct result of what's happening in Canada, because all shit flows downstream. And so I do just want to say that the work that I'm doing right now, I know, let me check my little thing here and see how long I got. I just want to say that, folks had asked me to talk about allyship, and I can talk all day about Standing Rock, and I can tell you about organizing, and I'll open up to questions if y'all have specific questions about organizing. But I do just want to say, as a room full of mostly non-people of color that I see, if there are some of you that are hiding in here, you feel free to raise your hand. But this is a mostly non-native, non-people of color room. Everyone in here, if you are not a person of color or non-Indigenous person, should be thinking about your allyship and thinking about not only about how you're going to be an ally, but how you're going to be an accomplice, because the time for allyship has passed. We no longer have time for people to say that they can just stand up and hold a sign, or that they can just attend a march and that that's going to be enough, because it's not. I can tell you 2 years ago I was standing at the end of a rifle and I was watching a man walk with a can of bear mace that was the size of a fire extinguisher that you see in regular facilities, full of mace, and he was walking past children as slow as he could, and he was macing them in the face. And then they would stop and they would take a breath, and then he would go back and he would do it again. And that was the least of what they were doing, right? And it was to kids. And I watched them break my little sister's wrist. And when she showed me the man that had broken her wrist, I walked up to them and I said, do you know how old they are? To these police officers? I said, they're 16, 19, 21, 23, 18, 17. They didn't care, right? They do not care about our futures because they do not want us to live. I want y'all to know that, and I want you to leave here knowing that is if it's a surprise to you or it's a shock to you that people don't give a shit about Indigenous peoples, they don't care about people of color, it's not a surprise to us because it's been happening since people showed up. I really think that, we've seen in the United States, there's a Society of Fearless Grandmothers in San Francisco, and they say that they show up because grandma medicine is different than anybody else's, right? No one wants to picture a grandma and picture a grandma being hit or picture a grandma being brutalized. Grandmas can de-escalate situations, They were going up to police officers when we were making murals, and they were, putting their arms all around us, and they were telling the police officers, it's not very nice what you're doing. It's not very cordial. It's not very polite, and these, okay, well, I'm sorry, ma'am. I wasn't trying to be rude, right? Because people can picture grandmothers in that way. In that way, they're using their medicine, right? They're taking their power and they're actually intervening, physically intervening on behalf of the work that other folks are doing. Even insofar as just saying, I'm a grandma and all I can do is show up and be a grandma, but I'm here. I think also that there's this wave of refusal to acknowledge that Indigenous peoples know things way before science will ever figure it out. And so I think it goes without saying that for folks that are really surprised about what science is telling you about water, people are finding out that the plants can understand what we're saying, People understand that the trees are actually developing these familial networks right in their mycelium. All the way down into the soil, these fungi are even talking to themselves. And when you uproot a tree, even if it's a seedling, it won't replant itself in the way it had before because you had taken it away from its whole family. If you look at things down from the level of where families are being separated now, all the way down to where trees are being uprooted, and you think about the family being separated from that point in the soil all the way up to where people are growing, two-legged people are being separated, and then when you're destroying a habitat and you're separating the animals from their homelands, it's happening everywhere, and everyone seems to be turning a blind eye because it's just not happening to them. I really want folks that are here to know that in Canada, there's some youth that are really doing incredible things, right? I'm sure you've heard of them, these youth that are like Makasha and Cody that live here that are, fighting for their Six Nations rights, that are fighting for these youth. How many of you know about the suicides in Canada for Indigenous youth? Okay, so how many of you have personally been impacted by the loss of a life? Great. Not great that they died, but great that people know what it feels like so you can empathize with one another, right? Because you don't want to feel alone in your experience. That's what a lot of people are feeling right now, is they're feeling loneliness in their experiences. They're feeling isolated, and then they're saying, well, you don't know what it's like to be like me. Well, okay, well, you can't understand. You can't possibly understand. You can't help me, and I can't help you because you don't know what it's like to be me, and I don't know what it's like to be you. That's what our world has come to, right? Except there are kids here who I love very dearly, who realize that this is something that happens. They recognize that there's this kind of displacement of us and them, and there's this kind of intergenerational gap, right? Where the youth aren't really speaking to their elders. The elders really don't care to hear what the youth are saying, and yet they're still showing up in these spaces that are kind of awkward and uncomfortable and reaching out. They're asking for help. And the thing is that a lot of folks don't realize that Indigenous peoples, we already know how to help ourselves. We already know how to save ourselves, right? We have ceremony, we have our culture, we have our languages, we have our songs. All we need is the resource and the help. I think that what I'm calling on is for folks to be the vehicle and not the solution. There are a lot of people like Makasha and Cody who are doing the work, but there's no resource available to them, and they don't know who to ask because those doors aren't open. I'm sure that nobody here has not been privy to nepotism. They don't know what it's not like to have a door slammed in their face because they didn't come from the right family or the right tribe or the right organization. Everyone knows what that feels like, that lateral violence, that oppression that happens. Except it's happening to kids whose territory it's on, right? everyone's fighting Nestle, everyone wants to protect our water, but you can't really say our water when you showed up and it's their futures and their people who have had roots growing out of their feet for millennia. I think that one of the things that I just want y'all to take away, and then I promise I'm done getting mad, is that, you know, that it's a fact, right? 12 years is what IPCC said we had, 12 years before everything goes to shit. I don't want to have kids, right? I don't want to have kids. How many in here are like in your 20s, 30s, 40s that don't want to have kids because you're scared that if you have kids, they're going to have to inherit whatever is left behind, right? I don't want to have kids. But then I think about all the babies that are here and they didn't ask to be here. Okay, so what about their futures? And I think about the kids who are committing suicide who can't even think 12 years down the road because they haven't even existed as far as this country's concerned since they've been born. And in the United States. At least y'all have some guy who pretends to reconcile, right? We just have a guy who puts Andrew Jackson on his wall and is like, kill the Indian, save the man, we got it. Yeah, I think that it's just, we're at a point right now, and with this Nestle protest that's coming up, and with this run that's happening, if y'all know that things are happening, you're doing great work. You really are doing remarkable work. But it's really important to support Indigenous organizers. It's really important to say, hey, I may know how to do something really, really well. I might be the best funder. I might be the best one that knows how to speak. I might be the best one that knows how to gather. I might be, you know, the best at whatever you're the best at. That's great. But this is not the time for you to be the best at something. It's the time for other people to learn how to be the best so that everyone can succeed and move into the next generation. The last thing I wanted to talk about is that, you know, we're coming into a new year, right? 2019. A lot of us in here are older, and we're not going to see the effects, the long-term effects of what happened, right? A lot of people are going to be gone before they ever have to deal with some of the catastrophic climate situations that we're going to be facing. And yet, I feel like many of you probably know things that these youth don't, right? You want to impart your knowledge on them. I would encourage you to find, for the elders, one youth that you can talk to that's not related to you. One youth that you can talk to impart some knowledge upon them. And here's the trick with imparting the knowledge, though. You're educating them. You're not condescending to them, right? You're not, when you're even speaking, you're going to be on the same level, right? No one is above, no one is below, no one is greater, no one is less. And for the elders, kids need to see that elders can speak to them without being condescending, that they can be seen as equals, that they can be respected as future leaders. Indigenous youth in general, need to know that they are being trusted to lead because they are going to have to. For the young people that are in the room, how many of you talk to your grandparents? Raise your hands, be honest. Okay, not enough. Okay, I personally, people, if you find me online, I talk about my grandmas a lot. I was raised by two of my grandmas. They're incredible, they're both gone, and I miss them every day, and sometimes I think about questions and I'm like, oh, why didn't I ask them that? If you are a young person and you are not talking to your grandparents, your homework is when you go home tomorrow, sometime this week, you need to contact your grandparents. You need to tell them what's up. You need to tell them thank you, because without them you would not be here. You also need to ask them if they have anything that they want to teach you. I didn't realize that was such an opportunity with elders, but I recently asked my grandpa if there was anything he wanted to teach me, and he told me, well, sure. I said, okay, well, what does that mean? I apparently had a great list of things that he wanted me to know, and I would have never known had I not asked. Knowing that we're going to be taking up the mantle, knowing that we're going to be in charge, knowing that we're going to be the stewards of the land, and all of these children, and all of the children that are in cages, and all of the children that are being told that they can't enter the borders, and all of the people that are here who are going to be displaced by this global water crisis that we are now entering. We just need to have an ability to communicate a little bit more. I know that it's World Water Week, and I know that we're all here fighting for the water, but I am a firm believer that water, yes, somebody said it is sacred. It has its own spirit. It is its own being. It is its own body. but you can't properly honor water if you're not first honoring yourself, and honoring your creator, and honoring your ancestry. And so I just want to invite folks, wherever you go this week, to honor the water, but also honor the fact that you're a living, breathing being, and that there were people that were living, breathing beings that came before you who really wanted you to be here for whatever reason. Sometimes I look at folks and I'm like, why you? You know, like, my grandma was a really, really lovely person, and I'd much rather it be her than you. But I can't change that. And finding the humanity and finding the way to talk to people without holding their feelings necessarily all the time, without having to constantly educate them, but being acknowledging of the fact that they may not know everything you do is really beneficial. So I think I want to conclude there, and if folks have questions for me, I don't want to sound all preachy and angry, so feel free. Thank you very much.
I'll just project.
No, it'll be on in a second.
Okay.
Go for it.
Thank you so much, Eryn. That was beautiful. So now we're just going to open up the floor for some questions that Eryn will kindly answer. So we can take 2 or 3 questions at a time. Okay. So 1, 2, 3. Speak as loudly as you can. Yes?
So, I was just at a gathering to make you feel good about what's going on. I know that down at Six Nations right now, they're doing a symposium on the Guyana Lagoa, which some of you may know is the Great Law of Peace, only it's not a law, it's the way. So, which is a methodology and protocol for working us out of the kind of situations we're in right now, because we got away from those teachings. And there's a group of elders called the Onondaga 15 that are headed to The Hague right now that can carry your concerns and your voice to The Hague. So I think I can connect you. My question is that I'm a water protector here, and this water here, which has got radioactive elements, heavy metals, and organic, volatile organic compounds, was declared safe for human consumption by the local medical officer. It's headed straight towards Walpole because it has no E. coli. So how would you recommend that I deal with someone who took an oath to protect all the public, gets paid about $250,000 to do so by the Crown, and yet says this is safe for human consumption because the Ministry of the Environment, without any data analysis or nothing, told him it was. So how do you deal in a Standing Rock kind of way with that kind of brute force that is more structural violence? Because in these communities, unless the medical officer blows the whistle, nothing happens. And these medical officers apparently are under duress, I don't know, but they are not sounding the alarm that we have a Flint, Michigan type situation happening all over Ontario today. So how would you do that?
Like, my initial thought was just like, I'm gonna have somebody hold him down and make him drink it. Yeah, no, they waterboarded us in Standing Rock, so probably not the solution, Eryn. You know, I honestly think when in Minnesota, there's a woman. Her name is Dawn Goodwin, and when she speaks to people, she brings the elements that she's praying for, that she's protecting, and she puts them out when she gives her public talk. And, you know, she asks folks, you know, when she's praying for the water, she wants you to see the nibby that she's praying for. And when she's praying for the Monoma and the wild rice, you know, she puts it out. I don't know if y'all have public hearings. They've seen that at the public hearing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, in my brain, everything I'm thinking is not legal. So maybe we should have another conversation where I'm not on live television or Facebook or whatever to talk about this. But I really think that in a legal setting, in a nonviolent direct action setting, people don't like nasty stuff to touch them, right? I don't like nasty stuff to touch me. I want them to have to interact with the water. I don't know what that means or how we could find a way for that, but for them to have to physically interact with the water is not something that anyone has to do, especially when they know it's bad. I would also think that if filming them when they're interacting with this water, that they are eschewing, you know, and maybe they get sprayed with a water gun, maybe it gets dumped on their head with a bucket, I don't know. Ideas maybe. That definitely didn't come from me, they came from Creator. But I think that if these things are to happen and you record them, why is it that you're fearful of this water? Why is it that you don't want it to be on you, but it's okay for everyone else? One of the big things in Standing Rock was that the white community said, we know this is going to be really bad, just ship it down to the Indians and we won't have to deal with it, right? Just put it a little bit further south. My big thing is put it right here. Find a way to put it right here, because when it's in your face, you can't really do anything else about it. And also, I mean, the internet is wildfire. The internet is wildfire, and I know in Arizona, or sorry, New Mexico, when the Gold King mine spill happened, when the EPA released 35,000 gallons of toxic waste into the San Juan River and didn't tell anybody about it, so the natives couldn't shut off their well intakes in time. They actually had water that they sent to the reservations, and they were sent in recycled oil tankers. And there was a live stream video of the Navajo Nation president going up to the spigot and getting water out of the spigot. And as he was doing it, you could see the water separating from the oil. And that was what they had deemed the Environmental Protection Agency was good enough for the indigenous communities that had been impacted. I'm not saying that that would be enough pressure, because Trudeau doesn't seem to care, even though everyone knows about his masquerade. So I'm not entirely sure, but I definitely think that nonviolent direct action is probably something that you'll look into. Creative resistance maybe, and water guns. So that's, I mean, we can talk more, but that's an idea.
Okay, thank you. There was a question over here. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just pointing at that because they're listening to me.
Oh, okay. So there was another question over here.
I look around the room and I see that we have laptops and cell phones and university degrees and fancy cars, and we own homes and go out. And I was wondering, in a room like this, full of resources, so much money, so much clout, so much power, what can we be doing with that power? How can we funnel that to the right way? What can we do? I'm sure we all have a wallet on us this night. What can we do?
Well, I mean, donations, right? Donate to your indigenous organizers, because we never have enough money. That's like kind of written into the code for like all of North and South America, is just to make sure indigenous peoples don't have money. So all jokes aside, really donate your money. Also donate your time. If you have a degree, if you have some vast knowledge about something, if you're really good at making maps, if you know people that are good at making maps, we made an interactive map in Minnesota about Line 3 where folks could actually see where construction sites were, so that they could actually see where it was going and what it looked like. And so when folks went out to protest, they actually knew where they were going and what they were looking at and how they were going to stop construction. It was really, really helpful. If you have that ability, offer it. We are looking currently for a screen printer. We want to make some screens to have some shirts and patches made for Saturday. If you know somebody that screen prints, send them our way. If you know folks that have camera equipment, if they have recording equipment, if they, extractive media is so huge in indigenous communities, we don't need anybody else to tell our story, ever. You know, we are perfectly capable of telling our own story, but some of the things that we're not able to do is put really nice cameras, really nice equipment in the hands of the youth that need to be able to tell these stories. If you have the ability to donate cameras, if you know folks that know how to donate materials, please send them. I can give contact information. Makasha is here. We can direct them directly to Six Nations. And, you know, I work closely with the Indigenous Studies Department at McMaster University. You know, if you're worried about where your money's actually going to go, we can send it to them, and you know they can be supported because they're also doing really good works. If you don't have money but you have an ear, if you have friends that have social capital, telling them what's happening and making sure that they're amplifying in a good way, and that you're also verifying what you're saying with an Indigenous person if it's impacting Indigenous communities is a necessity. And also ensuring that one of the biggest things I think is that when you're offering help, offer with humility, because people in my communities especially are used to white saviors, right? Who are gonna come in and they have all their big money and they have all their big resources, and it's like, and I have this card and I have this card and I have this and I have this and I have this and I have this, and you have nothing, so which one of all the things that I have do you want? And people, it's an affront, right? Because we would have had an abundance of everything we needed had everyone just left us alone. So when you're making that offer, know that you're offering people who at some point your ancestors may have taken everything from, and work from there. I think that there's a handful of places, if you want to talk afterwards, where I can direct you to maybe donate specifically.
Okay, there was a question back there, Susan.
Hi there. Eryn, I want to apologize. First of all, I was supposed to be set on country, and I didn't mean it in an ownership sense or in any sense of superiority. It was a general, all-inclusive, nervous adjective, and I apologize for that. But what I do want to talk to you is about language and about communication. And it is so clear to me that genocide is a real issue both in Canada and the United States for our First Nations people. And one of the things that no, it's true. No, thank you. So my concern here is that the clock is ticking and time is urgent. And it became clear to me that everything was really working when I looked at, I was down at Woodland Cultural Center listening to all the speaking. It became clear to me that not only were the treaties still totally misunderstood and misused and all kinds of the language was a communication device useless, but how these people are having things in terms of trying to bring truth and reconciliation, which I just think is such a generous way of trying to introduce us to understanding that language and communication is an issue. How do you find it down in the States? Is it in Los Angeles? I mean, I read some of the things that you're doing, and I wonder what your audience is hearing, if they're hearing what you're saying.
Well, I guess I should ask, did anybody hear what I said? I mean, I think, how do I wonder if folks are hearing what I'm saying? I think in the United States, everyone that's like me is like shouting in a glass cage of emotion, right? We're just like banging on a wall and feel like no one can hear us because it's set up that way, right? I'm a millennial, I'm brown, I'm a woman, I'm queer, I'm really smart, incredibly verbose, super attractive. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, there's a lot of things, right, where I'm stacked opposite ends, right? How do I get people to listen to me? I'm 6 feet tall with shoes on. And so one of the big things I do is I just kind of hold space. It's a big thing for me. I'm a really introverted person when I'm around people I don't know, but when I stand in front of a crowd, I was raised by my grandmas, who were both educators, and they said if you had to say something, you need to speak up. And I feel like I have a lot of things to say, and I spent a lot of my life being really quiet, because I didn't want to piss anybody off. I grew up in a community where I got beat up for being Native, and then when I moved to the res, I got beat up for being half white, and it was always kind of walking in two worlds. But I think one of the things that I try to do and to get people to listen to me is to relate with them. I'm not always good at it, and sometimes I don't want to relate to the people that I'm speaking to, but I have to remind myself that not everyone's going to hear me if I don't try. And I think that one of the really helpful things for me has been, in terms of being listened to, is that I am a marketer, right? I do know how to manipulate the online algorithms to get people to see what it is I'm trying to say, but in person, I think when I want a message to get across, no one can have my experience. No one's ever going to have it. No one's ever going to know what it's like to be me. No one's ever going to know what I've been through and what I think about when I go to sleep at night. But they're definitely not going to forget me. because I'm gonna make sure that I leave an indelible impression upon them, right? I don't care if I'm standing in front of the White House and I'm telling Trump he can't grab my pussy, or if I'm standing inside of a church and I'm telling a pastor that it's not okay that they continue to tell children that they're gonna go to hell if they don't believe in God, because that God never existed before that pastor's people got here. No one was ever gonna go to hell, you know? And I think that for a lot of folks, it's really abrasive to hear me speak. But I'm actually kind of glad for it, because maybe it's the first time that people will ever hear uncompromised truth. And also, I guess I don't have a lot of time to worry about if people are listening to me, because there's so much work to be done. Kids are committing suicide. There's no water. Pipelines are spilling. Women are going missing. Friends of mine are posting almost daily about women they know that are going missing because of pipeline extraction. I don't have time to care really if people are listening, because I just got to keep telling other people, and then I can't pay attention anymore. I got to go tell more people. And I think that people are so caught up at, you know, with whether or not people are gonna, their jobs are gonna tell them that they can't do that, or their family's gonna be mad at them at Thanksgiving, or their partner might not want them to do this, or their friends are gonna think that way of them. But honestly, we don't really have time. We have 12 years, maybe, if we get it right, maybe more. And I just think that there are so many more things to be impressed about in terms of taking action than just worrying about whether or not people are listening to me. I hope that when I leave, y'all will talk about me. You know, and not just about me as a person, but about the things that I said. I hope that some of you are enraged and you don't understand why you're so mad, and then you go figure it out. I'm mad because I was raised in a systemic and unjust system with white supremacy flourishing. You know, you're mad about that. I'm sorry, I can't help you, but you can figure it out. You're mad because you know that your ancestors were settlers and that they helped force people off of their ancestral homelands. I can't help you with that, but I'm glad that you figured it out. Whatever the case may be, you're realizing that this isn't your water, and that it's, you know, impacting actual Native peoples who are here way, way before anybody else. I can't help you with that, but I hope that you sit on it and you think about it when you leave. I don't want anyone to leave with animosity, obviously, and I don't hold any animosity towards anyone. I actually think that what you're doing is quite exceptional. I just hope that you all realize, if you haven't already, that we all have a role to play, and that people with privilege's role is a little bit larger. And that there is an equity and equality for all if you're not willing to give up some of your shares. So I think that's what I have to
Okay, so we're going to take one more question. Just one more question. So over here.
Hi, my name is Sam Kishigo, and I'm in business development. So I develop business and we pollute water. It's what we do. In order to give all these people jobs and to give other people jobs, it's what we do. We pollute water. I came from 6 today, and I got to listen to elders talk to children. Children talk to elders, and they talked about responsibility and our responsibility to each other and to our children and how we do it. My biggest issue has always been, it's been easy for me to talk to these people. It's always been hard for me to talk to us. Because for us, it's a different thing. For us, I'm seen as a bad person because I develop business. And if you do those things, you're on their side. And if you're on their side, you're not on our side. How do we, what have you seen? What's your best advice for us to bridge those gaps, to get our people to walk into this room and to speak like you do without anger, so that we can all listen to each other and figure out what it is we have to do, because they obviously need us and we obviously need them. How do we bridge that gap so that they're not afraid of us? They're not afraid we're going to take all their jobs. They're not afraid that they're not going to be able to feed their families, because that's what they're afraid of. But they're also afraid of losing their children, their health. There's statistics that show that females are born with abnormalities, males are born with brain tumors, females are dying at record numbers. How do we bridge that gap and get them to work with us in the best possible way, and not, I love what you said, and I love how you said it. It's always been hard for me to do that, because I have to appeal to people on a certain level. How do we do that and appeal to both sides?
I think
It's a good
I was like, that's a good one, and it would have to be the last one, huh? No, you're okay. I'm not upset. Thank you for your question. I think, my one of my tribes is an oil nation, right? We're one of 8 out of like 576 federally recognized nations, and we're an oil nation. And so a lot of what I do is not well received by my tribe. And I don't fault my tribe. We are one of the only nations that actually went to the White House. We sent a delegation, and they fought for us to be able to be situated near our original homelands. So I'm not mad at the people that have fought for my life and my ability to do my work. I don't hold it against them, that they found a way to survive. So I hear what you're saying when you're like, I'm a business developer. I'm also on the outside because I fight oil and my nation makes it. Talking. I think, okay, so, talking to non-native folks is easier because anything you say can be true, right? And I mean, honestly, anything you can say can be true because they mostly made everything up. So, I mean, it's not like, how is anyone that's non-native going to know what a native experience is? It's easy because you can say anything whether or not it's true and it could be believed, but if you're speaking from a true place, a genuine place, it's even better received because they know that you're being honest, right? And then that bridge is built there. I think that people nowadays with social media, they're so used to hiding behind their online personas that when they meet people in real life, I don't know if anybody else is really good at telling when people are lying to them, but it's a lot easier, right, when you're having a conversation and it's not as easy to have that conversation. In terms of speaking with Indigenous folks, it's really hard. It's really hard because you don't want to be a traitor, right? You don't want to make friends with the people that ruined everything to begin with. But my best friend is white. Most of them are. And I think that I was lucky. I had grandmas that just told me to love people. Not everyone learns that, but I think it's my job to help people learn love in ways that they've never known it before. And the way in which I do that is to try and use my language and my work to highlight the teachings of my elders. So I think in terms for you, maybe talking to other people, just keep doing it because we're going to be on the outside forever, wherever we go. And if you're Native and you're in a non-Native community, you're on the outside. And if you're working with the non-Native community and you're from back home, you're on the outside because you're not supposed to do that. But at some point, the people that believe those antiquated ideas of separation and us versus them and my method versus your method are going to pass away. And if we can somehow turn this climate around, then there are going to be people that are my age that are over everyone else's crap that want to do things better than it's been done. And I personally love hanging out with kids because have you ever noticed when they're in a room together, they have no idea about anything? Like it's like gender, race, sexual preference, like none of that, there's not even a thought in their head. And I just love that they walk up to you and they're like, I'm a chicken. And you're like, right now, like in this moment, and they're like, I'm a chicken. And you're like, great, cool, I'm a rooster. Like, you can be whatever you want. And I think that in organizing and in activism, we get to write the rule book. We get to write, we get to be determining our own path because no one else has ever done it before. There's never been a resistance where people on both sides of all medicine lines, right, on all the borders are saying, borders kind of suck, and the government does too, and you guys are not really nice to the people that we're here to begin with, and we're tired of it, and so we're just going to do something entirely different, and you don't get a say because we're younger than you and we're going to be here longer, and that's just the way it is now. You know, and I think that, last thing, and then I promise I'm done. I just think that, I always say that kids are the biggest bullshit detectors, and to stop lying to them. And I think that we also, in the same vein, kind of practice what you preach, is that we have to stop lying to ourselves. It's okay to not like talking to certain people. It's okay. There are some people that I just don't want to talk to. It has nothing to do with their race or who they work for or where they come from. I just don't like them as people. And I think that we need to start recognizing our very valid emotions. Anger is a valid emotion. Disappointment is a valid emotion. Uncomfortability, when I stand in front of my people, half of them don't want me to talk. You know, I know that, but I do it anyway because my grandma told me that if I have to say something, I need to speak up, and so here I am talking. I don't know. I think that we just have these teachings that came to us, and by whatever way they came, we have to honor them. And I think that when people call upon us to act, we have to act. And so just knowing all of that you've been privy to this little native insight, you've been called upon to act, so now you have to act. And I think that, you know, I wish you the best of luck because Canada honestly kind of freaks me out. In the United States, like, I know that they hate natives, right? They make, there's no qualms about it, right? They're not here for Indigenous peoples. They never have been. They're not going to be. But in Canada, they do this truth and reconciliation thing, and they like to pretend that they are doing more than they actually are. So I think that I'll pray for you. I think that you should water gun your people with that ugly water. I think that you're doing an excellent job, and thank you for your apology. I think that you have a lot of resources you want to offer, and we're going to take them. And I think that for everyone else that's here, you know, thank you so much for listening to me speak. It's not often that I get to come to Canada. I really like spending time with folks up here. I think you guys are awkward and funny. And I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to speak. If you have questions, we'll be here for a little bit, so you can feel free to ask me. And if you have any issues, I'll give you my email and you can just send them that way. Okay.